was trying to configure some of my new hardware. We've got audio, or video rather. That's the great deal. Unfortunately, I still don't quite have the audio input for that particular hardware down. I'm not sure what that is, or what the issue is there. It's supposed to be like a sort of a one-shot deal. Video and audio all in one, like, little USB plug-in, but oh well. We'll get around to fixing that after the stream, like when I actually have all the time in the world to sort it out, and I'm not delaying you good people any further. So, without further ado, I want to take this time to welcome everybody to the stream today. Hello, hello, welcome. We are going to be resuming Kingdom Hearts HD Final Mix after quite some hiatus on my end, getting everything ready for graduate school. Give me just a second here, going to make sure everything's running fine on Twitch. We'll be right back and ready to continue in maybe 45 seconds, give or take. Alright, almost set here, folks. Just one more little thing I need to check. Okie dokie. Wow, it is... As I said, it's been quite a while, so you'll forgive me if I'm not entirely abreast of the situation on this save file. If I recall, when last we had left off, we were stopping back here to pick up, I want to say it was a new summon after defeating Ursula and clearing Atlantica, meaning we are primed to launch into the third and final act of the original Kingdom Hearts. And we would have already obtained that summon. Great. Great news. So, all that taken care of, I think we're ready to move on to the last world in the second ring over here. We'll go ahead and depart from Atlantica, because, you know, why not? By the by, if you're dropping by on the live stream today, I want to thank you, first off, for your tremendous patience in allowing me to get everything sorted out with school and then return here, and also just for coming by to show your support or enjoy the show live in person. So thank you very much. I hope you're having a wonderful day. I hope everybody watching this is. But especially to my live viewers, I really appreciate you guys. And as I said, the tremendous patience you've showed me as I'm kind of getting acclimated to this whole streaming thing. Got quite a bit to talk about today, especially since I've had the good fortune to play Kingdom Hearts 3 straight through since my last stream, and oh boy, you guys, we're gonna have a lot of fun with that one, if and when I get around to it. Overall impressions, you know, are very good. I'll be honest with you, I loved the game. I would give it a very favorable review overall, but oh, no, okay. I thought Monstro was going to come get us, but thankfully not. No, instead we have triggered the story event, which is going to lead us to our next world. If you'll recall, we have eliminated every single member of Maleficent's little cabal of villains, save Maleficent herself, Hades, who is a non-entity, and Captain Hook, who is coming around to take his stab at us right now. It's never properly explained how his, like, 18th century pirate galleon is able to travel between worlds, but no, whale is, so don't think about it too heavily, I guess. So welcome to Neverland.
Sora. Good to see you again.
Well, where are Donald and Goofy?
Are they that important to you? More important than old friends? Instead of worrying about them, you should be asking about her.
Kairi!
That's right. While you were off goofing around, I finally found her.
Not so fast. No shenanigans aboard my vessel, boy.
Riku, why are you siding with the Heartless?
The Heartless obey me now, Sora. Now I have nothing to fear.
You're stupid! Sooner or later they'll swallow your heart!
Not a chance. My heart's too strong.
Riku!
I've picked up a few other tricks as well. Like this, for instance. You can go see your friends now.
Ah!
Let's get underway already. And keep Sora away from Kairi until we're ready to land.
That scurvy brat thinks he can order me around.
What shall we do, Captain Hook?
Nothing! The hold is crawling with Heartless. Let them keep an eye on the brats.
But, Captain, you know who is also down...
Shh! Did you hear that, Smee? Oh, that dreadful sound.
No, Captain.
Are you quite sure? Did I imagine it? Oh, my poor nerves.
Just wanted to give you the opportunity to savor that cutscene, bereft of... Oh, we've got another.
Finally found her.
All right. Yep. Then let's go up and talk to her.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Okay, but first, how about get off?
Oh, sorry.
Actually, a very cute little scene.
How you doing there? Looking for a way out?
If y'all can't tell, Neverland's going to be a very cutscene-dense chapter.
Okay then. Fine. Have it your way.
But you're stuck in here too, aren't you?
Huh. Nope, I'm just waiting for someone.
Who?
Tinkerbell, what took you so long? Great job. So you found Wendy? Hold on. There was another girl there too? Are you crazy? There's no way I'm gonna leave Wendy there.
She must be pretty jealous.
Well, we'll get around to the actual gameplay eventually.
Come on, Tink. Open
Now,
up
not
the
for
door.
nothing, these cutscenes, at the start of this chapter are fairly entertaining.
Pan.
I'm Sora.
Okay, we're in this together, but only till we find Wendy.
Now, I know this is somewhat sacrilegious, friends, but I actually never watched Disney's Peter Pan as a child. So I'm not entirely sure how he was characterized in that, work, as it were. But his primary character trait in this game seems to be a rather unbearable amount of obnoxiousness. Now, anyhow, before we carry on and have to endure yet more cutscenes in short order, a couple things I want to address that are kind of interesting about this world from a sort of a mechanical perspective. First off, Captain Hook's little galleon, and it is very small, mind you, comprises the entire world. We never actually visit Neverland proper in this installment, which isn't necessarily to the game's detriment, as well as I mentioned during that last cutscene. This world exists primarily to fulfill a narrative purpose. We will not be spending very much time here at all, but what time we will spend is going to be dense with new developments in the principal story concerning the three friends from Destiny Islands, all of whom are present on the galleon, it would appear. And new enemies, I think we get a new spell or two. Like, there's a lot that goes on in a short amount of time here. We also get my favorite ability in the entire series here, toward the end of this brief little chapter. More than almost any other world, the Disney elements are actually kind of ancillary here, with Captain Hook serving no real narrative purpose after being built up as kind of Maleficent's dragon thus far. Someone just posted in the chat, I don't know what a Mickey Mouse is, and at this point I'm too afraid to ask. Trust me, after a couple Kingdom Hearts games, you will feel as though you have no idea what anything in Disney is anymore. this is a very strange, incredibly convoluted series, and it only gets worse from here. So one thing you'll notice, it's really cool actually. In addition to these Heartless, Neverland's signature Heartless, the Pirates, which are basically just reskinned bandits that are a bit more defensive, we will also be attacked by that bizarre Shadow Sora that Riku conjured up on the deck. Is that a good or a bad thing that you don't know what a Mickey Mouse is? Honestly, anymore, I would say it's more of a good thing. Don't get me wrong, I loved the classic, I say classic, but like Disney Renaissance era films and shows when I was younger, especially the House of Mouse, which would air on the Disney Channel, which was like this neat little cartoon anthology series set in the framing device of this really exclusive nightclub that was managed and quarreled over by different Disney personalities. It was really, really cute. But now I think your only real exposure to Mickey Mouse would come either through this series, like Mickey Mouse himself, the character. This series, old cartoons that you would see, well, I have no idea what time they would air or where they may be found. Those bizarre knockoff, like, computer-generated children's cartoons that you find on, like, the really weird parts of YouTube where they use, like, copyright infringement out the wazoo to kind of pander to kids. Or through, like, some... I don't even know the name, but, like, I think Mickey and, like, the rest of the classic Disney stable are used as the principal cast of a children's, like, very young children's series on the Playskool Disney blog. Or Playhouse Disney? Playhouse Disney. That's what it was. Oh, and now, the same individual is, referring to Mickey as, like, that photo-negative guy. Yes, that is from a creepypasta. A certain creepypasta that, if I recall, was actually pretty well done for what it was. You'll forgive me for not commenting too much on the gameplay, we're just kind of battering our way through the hold here. But as I mentioned earlier, one little thing of note is we will be attacked sporadically by the Shadow Sora, who we can wear down and never actually defeat for a really healthy amount of experience, something like 150 per encounter, I want to say. And seeing as it doesn't really do much of anything, that's just free experience. May want to eliminate that, I think they call it the stun impact as my current combo finisher. Abandoned by Disney, that was the name of that creepypasta, and you say, you did better with the sequel. I would agree. I think there was a third entry in the series that was supposed to be like a prequel, but it didn't get much attention. It was released toward the end, more or less, of like the general public's waning interest in creepypasta.
Just a little bit of pixie dust. There. Now you can fly.
Here we go. Donald has a rough go in this series.
There are 7, supposedly. And Maleficent says she's not one of them. Hoist anchor as soon as possible. Leave all the dead weight behind, including her.
After the trouble of capturing her? And why those 7? What is Maleficent planning anyway?
Who knows? As long as it means getting Kyrie's heart back, I couldn't care less.
You're wasting your time. The Heartless have devoured that girl's heart. I'll stake me other hand it's lost forever.
I will find it, no matter what.
Captain?
What?
The prisoners have escaped. What's more, Peter Pan is with them.
Blast that Peter Pan. All right, then. Bring the hostage to me cabin, Smee. Hop to it.
What is it, Tink?
Peter? Peter Pan?
Wendy!
Please, hurry!
In the chat, someone said, "Wait, 7? Is this the Chaos Emeralds? Is Donald actually Tails?"
Wendy?
You know, you say that, but, well, they've already had to do crossovers with Pixar franchises just to introduce a bit of fresh meat into the series. So, give it 15, 20 years, Kingdom Hearts will have crossed over with every single media universe you can imagine. Of course, they're gonna do some Marvel stuff. Gotta go to Star Wars. Sonic the Hedgehog? Why not? They'll do just about anything to keep that series alive at this point. The Total War Strategy series, X Kingdom Hearts, why not? Tommy Wiseau in the room? Sure. Go to Chicago for some Trapped in the Closet action for Kingdom Hearts 5? I don't see why you shouldn't at this point. Actually, that would be kind of amazing. Yeah, instead of those, like, kind of bizarre rhythm games from Kingdom Hearts 2 and Birth by Sleep, you could have Sora and friends star in the world's first ever hip-opera. Kingdom Hearts style, that would be amazing. Alright, so we've kinda got the entirety of the plot we're going to receive for this world specifically. We just have to rescue our friends from Captain Hook and Riku. And this thing. Which does actually have some bearing on this world's plot, I promise you. Shadow Sora is actually one of my favorite enemies in the entire series, and you'll see why shortly. Kingdom Hearts, but it's FIFA. Oh no, please no. One of my favorite aspects of Kingdom Hearts 3 is that it involves no loot boxes, no contrived, like, pathways to paid DLC. It was just a completely wholesome, holistic experience that could be enjoyed in the way I would enjoy new games when I was a child. You could just sit down and immerse yourself in this world without being constantly assailed with advertisements for, as of then unreleased expansions or content that would supposedly complete what you just bought for $65, you know? No, Kingdom Hearts with FIFA would be... It would be awful, but it would also be the most AAA decision that any developer could ever make. So, yes, if you recall, I think we gained the ability to fly in a cutscene. I want to see if I can equip that. No, we actually can't yet. We received it in the cutscene, but we will actually be able to equip that and glide in the fashion of Peter Pan through the use of an ability very soon. You'll forgive me, I'm just kind of wandering around trying to grind up just a little bit. Ultimately, our goal is to get up here, to the captain's quarters. Oh, here we go. Sorry, my bad. We were meant to actually use these holes in the mesh to, well, first off, head over here and actually progress the story somewhat. But also, if we were so inclined... Best thing about not having Wi-Fi is you don't get pestered with, like, always online DRM and microtransactions. Oh, I hear that. So we know that Wendy's in one of these cabins on the upper decks, but we'll have to work our way around to her. I could have sworn there was some treasure in the wings if we headed this other way. But I could be wrong, it would not be the first time. So you'll see one of the things that makes pirates a little tricky is, they don't stagger quite as easily as most of the humanoid, like Chaff Heartless we've fought thus far. So real quick, I will swap Donald out for Peter Pan, who, despite never shutting up in combat, is actually a really solid ally. Extremely aggressive, does a ton of damage. and we will pop this Trinity real quick, which will allow us to actually advance the story after I allow my OCD to take control and give us one last once-over through the upper deck here. And no, it would appear we do actually have to advance the story before we can do anything else. So we'll ready up by calling in Peter Pan in place of Goofy this time, because I'm actually gonna want Donald for what's up ahead. And if you could believe it, folks, we are already, well beyond the halfway point as far as Neverland's content goes.
Riku, wait!
Okay, hold on. Got one quick message to respond to in the chat. Then we will get underway with the Shadow Sora boss fight, one of my favorite fights in the game. Someone said in the chat, then again, almost all my current gen games are Nintendo games, so that's probably part of not being pestered by, like, the current extremely deleterious AAA, like, milieu of, like, always on DRM, microtransactions, and TLC. Out the ass. Absolutely. Nintendo, I feel, and I have a Switch, just a few titles on it, mainly the really big console exclusives, has a much better handle on how to manage DLC and, like, recurrent player spending, or recurrent user spending, as the big boys like to call it, than do, like, a lot of other major publishers. Typically, when Nintendo has offered DLC, on the very few occasions they have, say for Breath of the Wild or Smash Brothers, I feel like I'm getting a worthwhile addition to an already complete experience, in the way that, like, very early DLC, or, like, traditional expansion packs for PC games I played growing up, like Age of Empires 2 would make me feel. I actually wanted more of the game, and then I was able to, to purchase just that. More of an already complete experience that I adored, instead of having to pay an additional fee to complete a fractured experience, as I had to do for, say, Metal Gear Solid 5 or games like that. So no, very good point. Nintendo has a much better handle on that, I think. Anyhow, to this boss fight. Shadow Sora, in the classic tradition of a doppelganger, fights more or less exactly as we would, except it can sink into the floor in the vein of a shadow, and it hurts like you would not believe. As in, it hurts way more than I remember it doing so in my last playthrough. It may have something to do with the bonuses I chose at the start of this playthrough. Now, if you hit it with certain combo finishers, it will actually dissipate and then reappear behind you for another, like sort of a follow-up counterattack. And it can also split itself into multiple forms. But the fakes need only be attacked once to dissipate, which is good news in my book. Could it be I'm underleveled? I'm seriously not used to taking this kind of damage. Not that it matters, however, as Shadow Sora, despite being powerful, doesn't have that much health. In the chat, someone said, Zelda taught me hiding in a corner is the best way to beat a shadow. Yes, it did, but in this game you gotta get just a little more aggressive. It's kinda cool, in Kingdom Hearts 3 they introduced water magic for the first time in the main series, I wanna say. And you can actually attack Heartless that have fused into the ground with water magic to bring them out of their, like, protective stance, and stunned at that. So as you can see, Donald is already in the state he has spent most of the game in, which is to say, disabled, unconscious. And so we're going to mainly be relying on Peter for support. Oh, wow, we actually died. That's a first, I want to say. Oh well, no worries, we'll just go ahead and continue from where we left off, but yes, that's quite something. I'm not entirely used to that boss being quite so difficult, so let's see what we have here. Stun impact. Oh. Well, we're gonna go ahead and activate Second Chance, because, well, God knows we need it after that showing, but I think I see what's going on. See, guys, usually at this point in my playthrough, there's a certain ability you can equip that typically causes Sora to begin combos with, like, that same little forward stab that Shadow Sora used. And I don't think we have it yet in this particular playthrough. Maybe that's it. Sonic Blade, somebody said in the chat? No, not... It's not Sonic Blade. That's, like a special attack that consumes MP. I'm talking about a short little mid-range stab, kind of akin to Dante's Stinger from Devil May Cry. Not quite what we're going for. I suppose I could go ahead and equip a tech boost, just to make up the difference in our AP consumption. So for Donald, we definitely want to use a Leaf Bracer, just so he could actually survive this time. That'd be nice. Goofy, we don't need anything since he's out of the party for now. Out of the party for now. And there we are. Now, Shadow Sora is immediately followed up by a second boss fight, one that, in my opinion, is a fair bit easier. Okay, let me actually try to do this like a professional on this run. Oh, it was just another Sonic joke. Okay, I gotcha. Sonic, I want to say, in like the internet's general consensus, has kind of overtaken every video game franchise. I'm kind of interested in like doing some research into how Sonic's mimetic appeal first came about. Maybe it was just a franchise near and dear to a bunch of internet folks' hearts that kind of took a serious nosedive in quality throughout our lifespan. So as you can see, the great news about Shadow Sora, for me at least, is it does not have a ton of health. Hits like a truck, yes, but does not have just an overabundance of health. Nor does it have a ton of defense, meaning like when I hit it, it actually takes off a pretty good-sized chunk of its health. There we go! That's the fight I'm used to. Dead Donald and relatively frail enemy. That's how we do it around here. Oh, our guest in the chat says they have literally no idea what's going on. Okay, I will actually try to explain as best I'm able. So, an anime protagonist was stripped away from his homeworld by a vortex of dark energy. Literally... think antimatter, right? Like the antithesis of everything that makes this universe what it is, but exists in a separate dimension as sort of the sediment of that universe's life, but is able to leak through into this one and cause untold damage and slowly erode the foundations of reality, whenever there is a significant, like, sort of tear in the universe, if you will. Like the Heartless, these little monsters we've been fighting, are literally eldritch creatures, in this world's, cosmology. And so, this poor kid, along with his friends, were tossed out into the ether between worlds in this universe, like different planets, and was, sort of caught up in this grand plot by Mickey Mouse and his court, for Mickey Mouse is the king of an entire planet in this universe. and their plot to sort of investigate the Heartless invasion and attempt to repel it as Sentinels of the Light worlds. It's extremely convoluted. Extremely convoluted. So the gist is, teenage anime boy has teamed up with sentient barnyard animals to repel the eldritch forces of darkness from consuming the entire multiverse and dragging it back into theirs to be used as a sort of, like, just sustenance in their larder. Oh, and the darkness is being aided by, classic 80s and 90s Disney's villains, such as, well, at least early on in the game, Clayton from Tarzan, the Queen of Hearts from Alice in Wonderland, and Hades from Hercules. Many of whom are voiced by their original VAs, which is quite incredible. One last message here. Weeaboo fights Cthulhu, got it. Yes, chat, you have grasped the, like, central conceit of Kingdom Hearts. To be honest, though, it's actually a pretty straightforward, if not a little heartwarming story of sort of coming of age and defending one's loved ones from the unknown, and Malefic, that's told in a method that is kind of emblematic of both the best of Disney and the best, well, instead we'll say the most emblematic of Square Enix's preferred narrative styles. You've got all the convoluted lexicon of Square Enix's beloved and extremely talented director Tetsuya Nomura, and you've got sort of the straightforward, maybe a bit too simple for my taste, but still very worthwhile and kind of meritorious classical Disney narrative style.
Well, this is as far as I can go. I gotta help Wendy.
And later on in the series, things do become a little more ambiguous as we start to see that the Heartless and their aligned forces aren't necessarily evil by any stretch of the imagination. They're just different from a different universe with different rules, and the Guardians of Light, such as they are equally capable of committing atrocities, especially in the prequel that was released for, of all systems, the Sony PSP, that is Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep. And it also received an HD upgrade and port to the PS4, so I might be playing it on stream a bit later. So you notice we dropped down that little trapdoor there to receive an additional defensive accessory, which can be equipped just as they are in Final Fantasy, that we'll probably be assigning to one of our friends before we go out on the main deck. I also swapped my weapon out for one that is just a little more capable in melee combat, and you will also notice this weapon is a bit longer. And yeah, weapon reach is actually pretty important in Kingdom Hearts, as a longer keyblade, such as it's called, will enable you to strike enemies from a bit farther away than you would think. It's not just like you get a few inches here or there depending on the length of your Keyblade. So I think we've got everything that can be gained from Neverland at present. I'll definitely be going back through all of the different Disney worlds, which, for the benefit of our friend in the chat, act as the, like, principal areas of Kingdom Hearts, like, that you will go through, Battle Heartless in and explore. Although, as we will see very shortly, there are a number of totally original environments that Square Enix's team devised for exploration as well, and those tend to be really interesting. But I digress.
Running off with that girl without even saying goodbye.
Captain Hook's VA does a phenomenal job in this series.
To the ruins of Hollow Bastion, where Maleficent resides. But you won't be going there. Unless you intend to leave your little pixie friend behind.
So the idea is Captain Hook and other, like, malevolent individuals have this innate connection to the darkness in their hearts, and they're able to call on it and command these, like, demons to a certain extent.
Which will it be? The keyblade or the plank? It's it! The crocodile that took me hand! Oh, Steve! He's after me other hand! I can't stay here! Go away! Oh, I can't stand the sight of him!
So if you noticed, Tinkerbell's model was completely static there and kind of clipping through the lantern. Good job. And I mean, I joke around a lot, but let me be perfectly clear. I adore this series. It's got a very special place in my heart, as probably one of the first series I grew really attached to as a child. And keep in mind, this game was released 2002, 2003, so, I mean, even though it's received a little bit of an HD remaster, you could tell it looked absolutely gorgeous when it first released.
You didn't think I'd leave you and Tink behind, did you?
So now we will be able to fly. And we got a little boost to our healing spell, which we're definitely going to need. So I will swap out Peter Pan for Goofy once again, just because he is more than enough of a brawler for our purposes. Yes, here we go. Okay, so not only, friends, are we going to be able to fly in the style of Peter Pan, which is a bit more of a hover, but instead, or in addition, I should say, after we complete this chapter in just a little while, we will gain the ability to glide, which basically makes us far more mobile in worlds other than Neverland, which will enable us to go back and collect quite a bit of kit that we missed earlier on. Okay, so now we've got just a bit of a brawl against some additional world-specific Heartless. Yes, friends, in addition to Shadow Sora, who will no longer be making appearances down in the hold in subsequent visits due to his demise at the hands of Sora and the Barnyard Boys, and the pirates, we now see two new enemies. First among them are the Air Pirates, which are extremely mobile and somewhat powerful enemies who are pretty consistently underutilized in the series. They make more than one appearance in the series, but whenever they do, it's always in a very limited capacity. Like, for instance, out here in Neverland, in our initial visit, this is their only appearance out here on the deck, and you may have noticed a much larger creature flying around off the port? Starboard? I want to say starboard is the right side. I could be wrong about that. It's been a while since I caught up on me nautical terminology. But this really beefy Heartless is one of my favorites. The Battleship. It's just this Heartless captain fused at the torso into a pirate ship that actually has a pretty significant health bar and destructible components a la Monster Hunter. You can destroy the port and starboard cannons, as well as the listen to me, the mast, and sort of the stern for additional HP, though we didn't really get to show that off, as that was a pretty weak battleship.
Is that you, Smee? Did you finish them off?
And now it's time for the finale.
They walked the plank, every last one of them.
Flight works too. Yes, it absolutely does.
Ready to make a splash, you codfish? Now it's your turn to walk the plank.
So, for a reason that will be understood after Kingdom Hearts 2, where he makes a appearance as a summon, believe it or not, Peter Pan really irritates me. For a reason that you may or may not be able to pick up on the stream, he never shuts up in combat. In this game, or in his brief appearances in Kingdom Hearts 2. So you'll notice that the battleship has kind of a ram attack. It's really difficult to dodge in midair, but when they appear later on are extremely easy to dodge, and really is the battleship's only attack of any note. So hold on one second, I'm going to pause the game and give you just a little bit of lowdown. Didn't expect Peter Pan to shank Hook, says one of our friends in the chat. No, yeah, that was just brutal. And actually segued, that sort of little leap it caused Hook to make actually has an analog in the boss fight. See, Captain Hook, as you would expect of a late game boss, and as is quite unusual for a Disney boss in the Kingdom Hearts series, is extremely competent as a one-on-one combatant. He hits hard, his attacks come out quickly, but he not only leaves his flank and rear totally open most of the time, but if you, and this is quite unusual for a boss in the Kingdom Hearts series in general, Disney or otherwise, if you are able to clip him with a magic attack, he will typically be extremely open and uniquely affected, i.e., if I strike Hook with fire, which I'm probably not going to do, it will ignite his surcoat and he will run about on the deck screaming and completely open for a bit. I'm going to try to fight him best as I can. Straight up, just to show you what he's capable of. He's an extremely capable swashbuckler who's also very easily stunned, but who can conjure up additional battleships. Piteous thing. But as you can see, the battleships are actually kind of weak once you clip off one or more of their components. And as flying enemies, are pretty vulnerable to the gravity series of spells, which typically harm standard opponents for a significant portion of their HP. It's literally a fraction they do damage for. So Hook has about 3 full bars of health, which is quite a bit for this stage in the game. Okay, you know what? I can't restrain myself. I'm gonna light him up. Didn't ignite him that time, but it did stun him. Okay, now he's enraged, so he is going to chase me while dealing, constantly throwing out short-range sword swipes that deal quite a bit of damage. There we go. And that gravity spell just totally shattered the mast off that battleship. Now we've just got Hook to deal with. After his rage wears off, as you can see, he's winded. Did not mean to climb the mast there, but you'll forgive me if I'm not demonstrating really dexterous play here. I'm a bit distracted trying to keep an eye on the stream. So sorry. But not that it matters, for as you can see, Captain Hook is... Okay, I'm just going to clip him with a spell. That should do us. Yes! Hook is toast. And Sliding Dash. That is that ability I was trying to recall the name of earlier on. That ability will allow us to begin our combos with, as I said, basically a DMC stinger, which allows us to really close the distance on enemies, which is extremely important if you want to play this game competently. And typically, if you pick an... okay, so for the benefit of the folks out there who are not intimately familiar with Kingdom Hearts 1, at the start of the game, you kind of pick a focus, which will actually determine the order you gain abilities in later on, and I'll finish this just a little bit later, but that's all you need to know for now. Enjoy the cutscene.
I still can't believe it. I really flew. Wait till I tell Kairi. I wonder if she'll believe me. Probably not.
You can bring her to Neverland sometime. Then she can try it herself.
If you believe, you can do anything, right? I'll find Kairi. I know I will.
Try believing your way through
So much
about
about flying, the
academic
Everything
final.
else that's happened.
What's that, Tink? What about the clock tower? You say there's something there.
And this is really cool. We are now actually in London, England. Which is technically part of the Neverland world and has its own, like, background track. So, London actually plays a pretty significant role in this game, as it's home to a fair amount of post-game content, or optional content, I should say, all based around this clock tower. Now, you'll see there are a bunch of doors here built into the clock tower, and these will have some significance, in subsequent visits to Neverland. They give us a nice opportunity to catch up on, or obtain, a significant amount of synthesis materials. And the clock tower itself actually plays a role in one of the coolest optional battles in the Kingdom Hearts series. So we're in London for a very specific reason. Message in the chat, London is the only city I will confirm. Yeah, basically, and in regards to Kingdom Hearts 1, it is quite literally the only city. This is the only time we even see a significant metropolis. But sorry, as I was saying, for the benefit of folks who aren't intimately familiar with Kingdom Hearts, you get to pick sort of a character progression path that ultimately determines the order in which you gain significant abilities as you level up. So, for instance, if you pick the melee combat focus, or the warrior's path, you will gain offensive abilities at much lower levels than you would otherwise. Likewise, if you pick the mage's path, you will gain abilities which supplement your magic spells, although not the spells themselves, as they are tied exclusively to story events and the completion of significant battles much earlier on in the game. And if you pick the path I chose for the first time in this playthrough, the path of the Defender, you will gain sort of support and evasion abilities much earlier on. So that's why we just now got Sliding Dash, an ability I'm going to equip right now. We don't really need Second Chance quite so much right now, so we'll unequip it temporarily to gain the ability to equip not only Sliding Dash, but another treasure magnet. Why not? That will allow us to pick up little baubles like money and magic points that other, like generic enemies drop from a greater distance. And Stun Impact, yeah, we don't need that right now. Okay, that's going to make this much easier. In the chat, is this why they're renovating the Elizabeth Tower, to add doors? Yes, absolutely. So you'll see, it is a beautiful midnight out across London town. But there's something a bit off with this clock face. Tell you what, to earn the goodwill of the citizens of the United Kingdom, let's just help them correct that by attacking this beautiful cultural landmark. Okay. But by attacking Big Ben's minute hand, we actually reveal the keyhole for this world. Now, just to give you the short version, keyholes are what connects every world to the others and to the space between worlds, or dimensions, planets, however you would like to parse it. And by locking them, as Sora is doing here, we are basically just reducing the likelihood that the Heartless lurking out in the void between worlds and their own, like alternate mirror universe, will be able to detect the light within the world and invade it. So we've got this voiceless cutscene that was added specifically for the re-release. Just gives you a little bit of extra exposition on Sora and Riku's childhood friendship. Kind of useful, I suppose. But that is the entire Neverland story chapter completed. And I spent much longer messing about with it than I should have, so, yes, it's very short indeed. Although we'll be returning to Neverland to pick up a couple extra treasures, and specifically to investigate London's, contribution to the post-game or optional content in just a bit.
It was reckless to bring her here without at least...
Specifically, we can return to Big Ben to fight an optional boss, which is really, really cool. They look like very doughy children, says our friend in the chat. Yes, absolutely.
A castaway.
The character models for
Though his world perished,
Square Enix, and specifically Kingdom Hearts original characters, tend to be somewhat awkward in earlier installments. By the way, shout out to the Gaming Spanners for joining us on stream today. Thank you so much for all of your interactivity and contribution. I really do appreciate it.
My power?
Yes.
These streams are much more fun when there's like an audience to interact with.
Now, child,
Like live, at least.
you awakened that power and realized your full potential.
So while Sora was ultimately found by Donald and Goofy, who are, no joke, high-ranking government officials in the employ of Mickey Mouse in this universe, Riku was found by Maleficent, both of whom have pledged to aid their charges, supposedly, to find Kairi, a third friend of theirs who was also cast out in the destruction of their homeworld at the hands of the Heartless.
Oh boy, she's getting steamed again. Do me a favor? Look after her for me, will ya?
Oh, why, thank you so much, Gaming Spanners. They say it's a pleasure, no problem, man, it's a pleasure to finally talk to one of my favorite creators live. Well, I'm sorry I haven't created all that much in the past, I want to say months, but it's actually been a couple years since I've uploaded anything of significance to YouTube outside of these streams, which will hopefully change. I received some extremely good news regarding graduate school over the weekend, and it sounds like I will actually be having the opportunity to move out, get a place of my own, and regulate my upload schedule, since I will have a dedicated space specifically for content creation, and a much more regulated environment and schedule, hopefully. As it is, everything's still kind of ad hoc on the streaming front. So yes, we actually completed Neverland. We gained the shared glide ability, which is not actually what I've been using to kind of sort of float about Neverland. It is exactly what you see described here. While in mid-air, so specifically after a jump, I can hold down the jump button to glide forward with a significantly slowed, though not entirely ameliorated, rate of descent, and also at a slightly faster clip than I would otherwise be able to move about. So I cannot pull that off in Neverland now, since I will be constantly using Peter Pan's fairy flight, while in this world specifically, much as we were able to access a different moveset in Atlantica, the Little Mermaid world. But the glide will be extremely useful in all other worlds, and there's actually a modified glide ability which we will be able to check out and unlock in, I want to say, or rather find. I think you actually find the enhanced glide in this game only, as the result of some backtracking and exploration, which we might check out in a bit. But we also got a brand new accessory, which we are going, or accessory, technically? No. So sorry. I'm kind of all over the place today, guys. We got a brand new weapon for Sora, a brand new keychain for the Keyblade. The Fairy Harp, the Neverland Keyblade, which is kind of pitifully short, as you can see there, but is extremely powerful. Not only does it give us a bit of additional strength even over my beloved Pumpkinhead keychain from the Nightmare Before Christmas, which I have been using for most of our time in this world, but it also enhances our magic points, giving me basically an additional charge on my magic gauge, the little blue MP gauge, but enhances the power of summons, and has a significant chance to convert any standard hit into an extremely powerful critical hit. So we will be equipping this in the short term. Another message from Gaming Spanners in the chat says, "You might not have created a lot, but I've certainly watched and rewatched your videos a hell of a lot, especially the Pet Rock episode." Well, thank you so much. Pet Rock is certainly one of my prouder moments as, like, the original creepypasta Overanalyst. I think we got a lot of pretty significant running jokes out of that one, and I just really enjoyed throwing it together. It was very lighthearted. The pasta itself gave us a lot to work with, and I'm quite proud that I and the panel were able to make quite a lot of something out of nothing. As that story, if I recall, the Pet Rock stories, we ultimately ended up covering, I want to say, that author's entire body of work. Were, like, just running at a consistent 4 out of 10, like, below average in a really unremarkable way. Which, to be honest with you guys, is kind of why I moved away from creepypasta as the principal focus of this channel and my output as, like, a content creator. A lot of the stuff I ended up finding more and more as, like, that initial creepypasta gold rush, as it was, wore down, was kind of I don't want to say underwhelming, though much of it was, but, bad in a really unremarkable way. Oh yeah, so, there's also scads of Final Fantasy characters, specifically characters from Final Fantasy VII, 8, and 10, present in the earlier Kingdom Hearts entries as well. So we're going to take this special little, basically, navigation module that Captain Hook was carrying around for whatever reason, back to Sid Highwind from Final Fantasy VII, so that he may install it in our high-tech Disney spaceship made out of gummy material, like straight up gummy candy that in this universe grows on asteroids in outer space. I'm not making any of this up, so he will enable us to penetrate the veil even deeper and access the light universe bastion of the Heartless. I think that's what's going on. So we'll just warp on back to the base of the Final Fantasy characters in Kingdom Hearts 1, Traverse Town. A completely original environment created for Kingdom Hearts by Tetsuya Nomura and his team, which is the refuge of all peoples whose homeworlds are subsumed by the Heartless. But no, just sort of to complete my thought. And guys, you will seriously have to forgive me if you are new to the streams. I have this horrific tendency to embark on these tangents and trains of thought and just sort of derail the entire stream. But no, I found a ton of stories that were, as I said, just 4, 5, 6s out of 10s. To be perfectly honest with you, they were underwhelming mediocre, kind of bad in this horribly generic way. And I don't mean that to sound half as harsh as it does, because, guys, so many of the creepypastas I read, or you read, or you could delve down into the creepypasta wiki and read now, were quite plainly either hackneyed attempts to sort of jump onto a bandwagon of, like, this bizarre and quite honestly remarkably niche in an internet phenomenon that sort of exploded overnight, but I don't think there was too terribly much of that. Or they were the attempts of fledgling authors to flex their creative and narrative muscles for the very first time that were subsequently kind of released onto completely open internet fora for evaluation and consumption, bereft of significant, like, revision consideration, or even like introspection on the part of the author. It was, here's the first thing I've ever written in this particular style, enjoy. And, you know, that's gonna be rough. If I was to sit down right now and make a completely original narrative of, like, speculative fiction, which is the completely technical term for it, or my more traditional and completely amateurish definition of amateur online horror fiction, it would be rough. And I have extensive experience writing for academic and lay audiences in regards to public policy, political science, and works of history, like scholarly study of history. I would not be able to do a phenomenal job. I would be able to hash out some halfway decent concepts, but I wouldn't be able to execute on them that well on my very first go, so that's a lot of what we were finding. Just decent concepts, sort of hobbled by an individual's inexperience. And inexperience, in my experience, relating to that field or in the vein of that type of project, almost always manifested in the same exact ways. Irregular or complete absence of punctuation, rote or extremely repetitious description or phrasing of specific phenomena or characters within the world, a complete lack of development of key characters, settings, or concepts, the utilization of extremely overwrought description when there was much description at all, or the complete opposite thereof. You could have a character in just this, or what is supposed to be, a completely horrid, overwhelming emotional situation who does not, to the reader's eye, emote at all. And we would just see that over and over and over again. The Gaming Spanner says 2 really great messages that probably speak to this phenomenon more than I ever could, effectively. It's such a shame that Pet Rock's body of work got deleted, because I've looked and never found anything. Yes, that's right, all of it did get deleted, which is another common problem I would find. These authors, or the fora to which they would submit their work, would quite frequently take down works, resubmit them, unfortunately not having addressed the critical issues over and over and over again. And also, from the Gaming Spanners, nothing ever really got worse than the post office, and I don't know if that's good or not. Yeah, no, I don't think anything anything got what the hell, Goofy? So I'm just going to let Goofy work off some of his excess energy as I address this. Yeah, no, the post office, the very first story that I ever covered on my channel. With the aid of the ever-talented Jacob from Bad Creepypasta, was perhaps the most, maybe not the worst story I ever covered, but easily the most bizarre Because I want to say in the very first paragraph, we have an individual open a door that was not a door, and also not there, and open and closed, as the author describes it, all in the span of 3 sentences. And this is completely mundane, mind you. This is, to anybody who's new to my channel or works, this is not supposed to be scary, supernatural, or otherwise out of place. The poor author just wrote the same exact scenario 4 different ways without ever correcting themselves for internal narrative coherence or consistency. It was very sad. Okay, so we're stepping in here to visit the fine folks from Disney's Pinocchio, because Geppetto, sporadically, will offer us brand new blueprints for our interdimensional gummy ship that we are never going to use, because the gummy ship in Kingdom Hearts 1 is a very bare bones and almost entirely pointless 3D Rails shooter minigame. So here's Sid Highwind from Final Fantasy VII, distressingly bereft of the vulgarity which kind of cemented his place in the hearts and minds of so many youth from the 90s.
Now, just remember what Donald said to you. No frowning, no sad faces.
How can you be so cheerful? There's still no sign of your king. Aren't you worried?
I'm worried.
The king told us to go out and find the key bearer, and we found you. So, as long as we stick together, it'll all work out.
Once again, I just want to give phenomenal credit to Tony Anselmo and Bill Farmer, the VAs for Donald Duck and Goofy, respectively, who have done a phenomenal job voicing their characters in this series, and so many other modern projects. Just phenomenal gentlemen who have turned in a mammoth body of work. Oh, so here's their other friend Kairi, who has been taken by Maleficent and the Heartless and used to fuel this supreme keyhole to what she believes to be an ultimate bastion of darkness known as Kingdom Hearts. So while you can read this exposition, basically just backstory, has very little bearing on the principal narrative of this game, I will address a correction we got from the Gaming Spanners. He says, or they say, I think in the first episode you started with the Ice Glacier, then the tapping story, this town of Bleck, and finally Post Office, and from what I recall they just got worse and worse as you went on. I think that might actually be the case. I'm so sorry. My memory is somewhat spotty regarding my own works from a couple years ago. Yeah, no. Our very first episode, that made it to air at least, was the, creepypasta.com potpourri. And it was easily my favorite work that we've ever recorded. That made it to air, at least. My favorite work we ever recorded for the original Overanalyzing Creepypasta series that ran a couple years ago, I should say a couple years ago to about a year ago, as far as the disbursement of episodes that were actually uploaded to YouTube, was one that was never released in its entirety due to extensive recording and audio issues on my end.
Huh?
It had a constantly revolving mega panel of guests, several editors, and it just fell apart because I was, well,
did you call me?
I was a teenager and remarkably inept when it came to recording, especially recording in the extremely ambitious style that I wished to emulate. That, of course, being 1999, the mammoth creepypasta that the ultimate recording and riffing on was something like 5.5 hours long. I do intend to go back and complete that at some point, but as creepypasta is no longer the principal focus of this sort of network of online media that I participate in. Rather, playing video games while not remotely discussing the relevant material, which seems to be kind of the it thing for people nowadays. That is, it'll take quite some time. Okay, so we've got one of the special enemies. The Sniper Wilds is present here, these little monkeys, and I think I actually discussed their mechanics in a previous stream, but if I didn't, you do not want them to sound an alarm. But so long as you don't, they will spawn repeatedly in waves of 1, 2, and 3, and every single time you defeat an additional Bouncy Wild or Sniper Wild without them sounding an alarm and calling in backup, causing you then to therefore forfeit any additional materials or rewards, you will be able to gain ever-increasing amounts of experience and totally unique synthesis materials and items you will not be able to find anywhere else from them. There we go. Actually takes them a while to sound the alarm, so...
Thunder! Thunder! Thunder!
Whoops, they sounded the alarm. My bad. We out of here. Very slowly. Oh god. Okay, yeah, so after they sound an alarm, they will call in backup, which will then peg you repeatedly with little slingshot pellets for very little damage until you run away. As I did. Because I'm the best at Kingdom Hearts. Gaming Spanner says that's longer than Happy Appy's cancelled Bad Creepypasta episode. I did not know they were going to do a Happy Appy episode. Oof. If I recall, Happy Appy was a remarkably poor creepypasta, not surprisingly in terms of execution or internal grammar. No. Happy Appy was an awful concept. So they actually had a remark... Let me give you, like, the cliff notes as I remember it. Keep in mind, guys, it's been years since I've touched standard creepypasta. Just seeing if there's anything else we can do in Traverse Town, by the way. References to Cloud from Eris. Okay, so there's not much of anything else we can do for Traverse Town, so it is time to sally forth to the final... Yes, the final main world in the first Kingdom Hearts. And that would be Hollow Bastion, where Maleficent and Riku are dwelling. And we'll be able to make a little bit of progress through Hollow Bastion before I have to sign off for today. I'm only able to do about 2 hours today, and I apologize for that. I will hopefully return to my desired schedule of 1, 2, or maybe even 3 3-hour streams per week fairly shortly. This was mainly just to shake the dust off of my rig and my broadcasting capabilities. My own personal faculties for broadcasting. Just sort of a fun little light stream. And now that Twitch is recording video on demand for me and archiving them, thank God, I will be able to upload these from Twitch without having to worry about issues with recording, at least for the short term. Wait. Do I want to sally forth to Hollow Bastion? Which, as you could see, has a ridiculous battle level. No, I don't. Not yet. So sorry. So for the benefit of our folks out there watching live who were not present for our first set of Kingdom Hearts streams, there is a phenomenal amount of side content that you are able to explore for the first Kingdom Hearts. If you'll notice, after we cleared Neverland, Chip, or Dale, one of them rescue rangers, sent us a message saying that there was a brand new tournament available in the Coliseum, which in this case is the Olympus Coliseum from Hercules. We are going to be stopping on by, very briefly, to participate in that tournament, because every single Coliseum tournament you clear gives you, well, additional treats. Brand new kit, brand new treasures, and in this case, the reward for completing this brand new tournament is one I definitely want. Gaming Spanner says I gotta change my Twitch name. This name's pretty poor. I don't think so, man. It works. Okay, so we've already cleared in previous streams the Phil and Pegasus Cups, so now we will have the opportunity to participate in the Hercules Cup for a very, very unique award. Gaming Spanner says it was Chip that told us about the Coliseum. Dale has the Rudolph nose. Thank you, thank you. I always get those two confused. So now we will be entering the Hercules Cup. Enter together. Oh, and this is actually pretty cool. After you clear a Coliseum tournament and receive its primary reward, you may then enter it under one of two additional conditions. If you enter solo, just Sora, which you unlock after your initial run, your initial successful run at least, you will be able to obtain a second, usually not quite as important, reward. But these rewards, mind you, are almost always totally unique pieces of equipment or abilities as well, so totally worth your time, mind you. And after your first successful solo run, you will be able to enter the Coliseum under a very strict time limit, under which you must complete that particular tournament which you have chosen. After so doing, you will receive a third and final piece of equipment. Okay, time for us now, friends, to enter the Hercules Cup, which will have Heartless from the last few worlds we have completed, in addition to your standard milieu of Coliseum Heartless. So, we've got Gargoyles and Shadows. The Gargoyles are our little flying friends from Halloween Town. You can see this one's trying to get me here. They will reform, and I think if you were caught by a gargoyle as it regains its material form, you will take a very slight bit of damage. Easy peasy.
Oh yeah.
Gaming Spanner says, I've already changed my YouTube name. Rolls off the tongue, but until now I'd never had a reason to frequent Twitch. Okay. Yeah, no, my Twitch account just sat dormant for years. Honestly, I would probably go for something other than the Overanalyst if that's not already what so many people here, or rather from my original channel, knew me as. So we've got White Knights and Air Pirates, and you will see Air Pirates almost exclusively in the Coliseum in this game.
That's the power of the Keyblade.
That's the power of the tiny, tiny baby Keyblade. Yes, we've got a battleship. I love these guys. Especially now that I may just kind of cheese them with gravity. Gravity, if you couldn't tell, is extremely effective against any type of flying Heartless, although it may just be the best basic spell in the game. And I said I was gonna be able to dodge that ram way more effectively on the ground, but apparently I was wrong. So while the pirates have a totally unique moveset, I actually think they are just the bandits from Agrabah with, like the same model with a different mesh. Gargoyles and White Knights, the Halloween Town heroes, trying to unseat the Barnyard Boys for, or rather topple them at least, for the championship seed in this tournament. White Knights, just a little irritating. Gargoyles, not so much. Their moveset's extremely restrictive in most of their attacks, such as that little homing projectile, are extremely telegraphed. White Knights are extremely acrobatic, and also their attacks have a pretty decent range. Okay, rare truffles. This is just a gimme round. They are pretty unique enemies in that they, if encountered in the wild, will challenge you to a little minigame. Basically, the more hits you land on them in the span of one session of air juggling... Oh lord. Okay, we will get back to that description later.
That's the best you can do?
This is Cloud. Cloud Strife from Final Fantasy VII. Back, and with more buckles than ever. You may remember we fought him earlier in the game, if you were here for one of our earlier streams, if you're watching this VOD. And, we were actually able to take care of Cloud pretty effortlessly in our first encounter with him, so there's no reason why this should be any different. Save that now that in this round, Cloud will actually be using his Limit Break from Final Fantasy VII, the Omni Slash, once we deal a little bit more damage to him. Or he should, anyway. Maybe he won't? Oh, I was promised some Omni Slash. Come on. And as you can see, here we go. So Omni Slash, not too bad. Just back yourself into a corner, usually, believe it or not. That's what we want to do here. And, well, I was supposed to block all of those attacks, but I never actually got myself into a corner. See, if you back yourself into one of the arena's corners, then he will always have to come at you from the same exact direction, meaning you will not have to rotate at all to block each attack, and he will not be able to get the drop on you from behind, therefore landing an attack that would be unblockable. Got it! Gaming Spanner says Cloud was in Smash and so is Mega Man, and Mega Man is in MVC, Marvel vs. Capcom, and so is Thanos, and Thanos is in Fortnite, so Kingdom Hearts is a shared universe with Fortnite. Oh god! No! Well, maybe I can exploit that to get a few more views for these streams at least? Eh? Truth be told, I actually played Fortnite once or twice way back when it first launched. You know, basically when it was just the PvE, like little free-to-play multiplayer little building game. And it was cute, it was fun to play with friends at least. It is completely unrecognizable now from the form I recognized, obviously, or from the game I played. Now I think it's almost exclusively like a battle royale, right? Like the PvE is totally neglected, at least by the players. I'm not sure about what the developer's doing. All right, so now we've got the Pirates providing our semi-final seed here. Oh yeah, I guess I should mention that the in addition to its RAM, the battleships can launch these weird, oddly high-tech missiles. Not like it matters to Sora and the Barnyard Boys, they got this. They can also perform, like, carpet bombing runs, but these, as well, are relatively ineffective. Well, against Sora, at least. I mean, Donald's just going to eat everything. That's kind of the way he works in this game. Gaming Spanner says, yeah, no, apparently I'm right. The Save the World mode in Fortnite is something they've never even heard anyone talk about. Okay, so folks, now it is time for the unique boss of the Hercules Cup, Hercules himself. So, Hercules, I will say, just before we get into the boss fight, because I'm terrible at explaining things on the fly, is actually somewhat underwhelming for a Greek god and one of the... demigod, and one of the most powerful characters in the Disney canon. He is most of the time protected by his heroic aura, which makes him completely invulnerable. This is not much of a problem, however, as periodically barrels, yes, totally mundane, empty barrels, will spawn into the arena. I may then pick up a barrel, toss it at Hercules, and so long as he is not performing one of two attacks, which renders him more or less invulnerable, I think, regardless, or rather, invulnerable, his aura will be negated, and he will be stunned, usually, allowing me to unleash with a few quick combos before he restores his aura with, I want to say it's this, like, leaping AoE ground pound attack. Now, in addition to said attack, he is able to attack with kind of a stinger of his own, this long-range, straightforward punch that is quite easily dodged as it is extremely telegraphed, and once he locks in, I don't believe he's able to avert course whatsoever. He is then able to, in addition to that, as I wear his health down, use either a charging headbutt, which he is able to change direction in quite easily, and sort of this bizarre homing, spinning attack with his sword, his gladius. And this is going to be a one-on-one battle, which is honestly not much of a bother, seeing as how Donald and Goofy would be entirely useless in this battle anyway. Aside from Donald's heals, it would be kind of handy to have those around. Okay. Let's see here. He doesn't have that much health. And he periodically pauses to taunt us. Not good for him. Oof. Almost blocked that. There we go. Oh. He knocked my barrel out of my hands. Oh no, that's just rude, sir. Hercules, Slayer of the Nemean Lion. The Colchis Bulls as well, I believe. Deceiver of Atlas. Weakness, barrels. Ooh. Oh! Damn! Okay, so that one was totally on me, I forgot. Worth noting for our friends who are not familiar with Kingdom Hearts, almost every single enemy in this series, or every single boss, has an attack that they will be able to whip out at any moment with absolutely no telegraphing in the event that you just wail on them, like sort of to prevent spamming. Spamming, stun locking, that's it. So sorry, I'm more than a little out of it today. It's been a very, very, very stressful week for me. What with the final steps of the admissions process for grad school. So guys, after today's stream, I would estimate we have maybe 3 to 4 more streams in us, depending on how long the optional content takes me and how much of it I feel like doing for you on stream. I'm not entirely sure how much exploration I'll do on stream, because a lot of it will just be tidying up chests that were just slightly out of reach before and which contain only gummies. Like, that would be pieces for the ship. If that's something you're interested in seeing, or if you would like me to have those as, like, chill hangout streams, I would be more than happy to broadcast those for you. But aside from that, all I know for certain I will be streaming are the optional bosses that unlock toward the end game, like around the Hollow Bastion chapter, and definitely the world, the awful, I'll be honest with you, I love this game, I love the series, but the world, the awful, awful world we've been building ourselves up towards with all of those torn pages we've been finding, which is the 100-Acre Wood. But after we're done with Kingdom Hearts, I'm not sure what we're going to do next. I know that From Software's new game, Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice, is going to be released in just a few days here. I'm really, really excited to see what that's about. I'm almost totally ignorant of it. Like, I saw one of the little gameplay trailers they showed. Oh, Gaming Spanner says they're sick today. Like, that's why they're able to catch the stream. I'm so sorry to hear that. There is nothing worse than catching ill while you're in the middle of a term. And correct me if I'm wrong, right? But you would have just gotten back from spring break if the schedule, standard academic calendar in your country is anything similar to our own. So hopefully it's not going to be too stressful on you trying to get back. But there is nothing worse than a long-term, like an illness taking you away from your studies, even if it's just for a couple days. So when Cloud is doing this little stinger thing, there's really not much of anything we can do. Except try to stay behind him so that whenever he finally does stop, we will have a pathway to a nice attack on the back. As a Gaming Spinners, I hope you get feeling better pretty quickly. I mean, that's awful. Alright, we'll get him pretty easily from here on out. Okay, I'm ready for you this time. Or so I thought.
Give me your best shot.
Gaming Spanner says, don't think it's the same timetable. They went back a few weeks ago and started the half term with formal assessments, like finals, they think. Yeah, the closest analog for our system, and these are very informal, mind you, are what we would refer to as midterm exams. You typically take those if your instructor would assign them or incorporate them into their course at or immediately after spring break, like it would be on one end or the other. And your midterm typically, if your instructor incorporates one, has the same or a very similar format to that course's final. The instructor typically designs both midterm and final exams personally for each course for most of the like fields I've taken courses in. My baccalaureate's in political science, and my minor was in history, so almost all of the courses I took were in those fields. So, you know, a lot of social sciences, a lot of humanities, even back in my gen eds. So, a lot of the time, we would just have straight-up essay exams, right? Like, the instructor would give you typically 3 to 5 little, like, topics to choose from, and you would have 90 minutes, 85 minutes, whatever it was, to write 2 or 3 essays of your preference from that list. Usually very, very straightforward, as long as you were did your due diligence, attended the course, were involved with the lectures, asked questions, that type of thing. You would do just fine. typically what I dreaded, right, were any times the instructors would get a bit more experimental. Not with their course, not with their exam construction, but with their course construction. My favorites, right, were essay exams and just old school traditional, like brick and mortar classroom lectures, things I could get really involved with, where I could ask a lot of questions, where I could interact with the instructor, where I could make sure my knowledge and understanding of the material was concrete. I loved that stuff, man. And I know, for like a student my age, right, like from our generation, that's supposedly really unusual. Oh, Gaming Spanner says if all goes well, they'll be back tomorrow. That's awesome. That's fantastic. I hope you've not been out too long, but I know nowadays, right, with like online portals, most of your work is going to be conveyed to you, like your assignments are going to be communicated to you online anyway, so. Rooting for you, man. I mean, I'm a little biased, right, but I cannot understate the importance of education or how much I support those who are trying to get their credentials. I aspire to be a professor, though. I don't know if I mentioned that on the my old materials, so I'm more than a little biased in that regard. That's how you dodge that attack. Not letting him get me with that one again. Oh, so there's his other AoE. Huh? Oh, hold on. We just lost a controller there. That's awful. Let me get my charger here. Oh, the trials of broadcasting live. Goodness gracious. Okay, so let me give that just a second to pick up some base charge before I do anything else. Gaming Spanner says they hate essays. Last one they had to do was on Romeo and Juliet, and the board gave you a question on Tybalt from, of all people. Okay, so, confession time. I am actually woefully underprepared when it comes to knowledge of Shakespeare in general. I actually have not read that many of his works. I did read Romeo and Juliet, but goodness gracious, it was ages ago. So much of my formative education was like geared towards, oddly enough, what I got a really solid base on, like what my instructor stressed when I was in what passed for secondary school for me. You can find some truncated discussion of that in my back catalog. I probably discussed like what my secondary education was like. Long story short, I was homeschooled. Long story short, it was kind of awful. I loved college, loved it. That's why I'm going back. But most of my education that was really rock solid was actually in the STEM fields, so like math, science, yeah, that's what I got the most complete education on. For understandable reasons, the sort of homeschool milieu over here isn't that big on like your fine arts, and especially not on your history. So I did read Romeo and Juliet, but God, it was ages ago. In college, I tended to stay or gravitate towards coursework, and material dealing with what over here would be considered the global foci, but really would be like literature and history from Asia, Africa, and Mesoamerica. And increasingly in my junior and senior years, really the Pacific. God, I love those fields. Especially the histories of Polynesia, Native American cultures. So fascinating. I may or may not end up doing a dissertation on those. But I digress. So sorry about that. Now that my controller's actually got some charge, rather, let's see if we can't knock this out. And there was Hercules' headbutt, which we actually deflected just fine. For a fair bit of experience. Gaming Spinner says if I'm not that familiar, all I need to know is Tybalt dies at the halfway point. Yeah, it's strange then that there would be an essay question on that character then. See, if I was anticipating what type of essay questions were going to be on, like, my finals then, I would almost always focus on themes, not necessarily central characters, but if I was going to be working with, like, not necessarily a minor character, but someone who wasn't part of the principal cast, then I would be chiefly concerned with specifically how they tied into central themes that also incorporate or surround the other characters or settings.
Now I finally know what you mean about strength of heart. Mine comes from Donald and Goofy.
Come again?
If we stick together, we're unbeatable. Not even Hercules stands a chance. With these guys beside me, I'm ready for anything.
But that's not exactly what...
Of course. Your friends give you strength. Isn't that right, Phil?
See, it's moments like this, by the way, that kind of lend Kingdom Hearts so much of its appeal for its fan base, myself included. It is an extremely lighthearted, optimistic story about friendship, about the bonds that, sort of the ties that bind, as it were. And it's basically what you would get, right, if Square Enix were given free reign to write their own Disney film. And it's kind of precious in that regard. So, you will see, we got another weapon there at the close of that tournament for defeating Hercules, and it is Olympus Coliseum's own weapon, the Olympia. Quite short, as you can see, but it's actually got Hercules' name inscribed on the span of the blade in, I want to say that might actually be Grecian script. But it's powerful. It's difficult to deflect, meaning, say, if I was to strike an enemy's guard or an armored section of an enemy where they cannot be damaged, I wouldn't necessarily flinch and recoil as Sora does, at least not to the same extent. And it's capable of inflicting extremely powerful critical blows. So I want to say, then, that the critical damage modifier for this Keyblade is much higher than it would be for a standard weapon. We also earned the Metal Chocobo for defeating Cloud, and I love the look of this one. It's basically Sora's own little baby Buster Sword. Its reach is extremely long, and its power is still higher. Not as high as the Olympia, but it's quite something nonetheless. But unfortunately, it reduces our magic cap, and it rarely deals critical blows. So these two are kind of inverses of one another in almost every meaningful way. Now, keep in mind, even though you see our NP decreasing here, that doesn't mean that Olympia decreases our max magic. Rather, the Fairy Harp increases it marginally. So I'm going to split the difference and go for the Olympia, which is an absolute beast of a weapon. And as you can see there, this is a pretty hefty guy, too. Keep in mind, that's going to be my verbal tick for the day, keep in mind. As you can see there, the Olympia is where we kind of just abandon all pretense of this thing being a sword. This is a bludgeon. Gaming Spanner says he did set most of the story into motion, but any links you could make back to him past his death are tenuous at best. Well, what that tells me, my friend, like keep in mind, I'm going to try to get over that verbal tick today. But it appears like you certainly have a well-founded knowledge of, like, the central narrative and the ways in which various characters and settings and indeed themes could kind of tie into it. So I'd say you're doing pretty. You've got a pretty good grasp on the work itself. So typically when you get a question like that, and I'm not entirely well versed in even collegiate level analysis of like creative writing or like literary fiction. Almost everything I've done has been founded in the social sciences, or specifically history, which occupies this really, really weird rift between the social sciences and humanities, so I'm not exactly an authority on this. If you needed to do, like, hard, like, scientific analysis using mixed methods, quantitative and qualitative research, I'm your guy then, but it sounds like you've got a very sound basis or knowledge of your work, themes, and the way they could tie together. I think you'd be pretty good. Usually I find people who have that foundation are then kind of able to manipulate their knowledge of the work really dexterously. And so then they can answer almost any broad-based question relating to their subject material satisfactorily for any marker. So if your instructors, or in this case the board, the GCSE board, were giving you a question of that nature, and it sounds like you kind of had to, like, reach for any conclusions you could draw or any points you could make, that's probably exactly what they were wanting you to do then. Just find anything you could in the work relating to this character and then scrape it together into a semi-coherent thesis. That's probably all they wanted from you. I took the last course I took for my as you can see, I'm not entirely the world's best speaker when I'm having to multitask like this, but when I can speak at length about something, it's going to be related to education and academia, because that's actually my passion, and I kind of regret that that's not something I could share with you guys a bit more in depth in my original works, but the last course I took was one I absolutely adored. It was History of the Pacific with my favorite instructor. And get this, it was a 5-week course, so it was a marathon through, like, the seminal works in the field, right? And every week she would assign us, our instructor would, a series, like sort of a battery of works, typically one monograph or book. Same basic deal. The monograph is just a more technical term for, like, sort of the type of work that these books contained. And a series of extremely dense supplementary articles that were typically a bit more recent, and could all be unified with a very general theme relating to the history of the Pacific, and each week we were to write a historiography, which, if you're unfamiliar, for anybody out there who's unfamiliar, is a scholarly analysis of the ways in which our authors approached their work. In other words, it is basically a history of the history that we have sort of incorporated throughout a set period or pertaining to a particular topic. It's kind of the historian's equivalent to a literature review, where you provide your reader with a narrative of the basis, sort of the foundation that you will be using for your own analysis of the self-same topic. So, I recall one unit in particular was kind of designed to be the grab bag or the miscellaneous unit for that particular course. So our instructor warned us in advance, the connections you're going to have to make for your historiography in this unit are going to appear to you far more tenuous than they have been for the precedent sections, and that's entirely intentional here. That's kind of what you're going to have to do. And indeed, my historiography required me to grasp at straws, as it were, but I ended up making, nonetheless, a rock-solid grade. I want to say, yeah, no, I made like a 90-some-odd, so... I want to say it was my lowest grade for that course, but it was a 90-something. It was like a 92, 93, or an A, so I was perfectly happy. So no, sometimes you'll find yourself in those situations, especially on like essay exams, where you have to really reach to make your connections, but that's often exactly what your instructors want you to do. And yeah, I see here, Gaming Spanner says, they did well, they got the A equivalent in their English course, they're inclined to agree. Hey, congratulations, I am so happy for you. That is the type of accomplishment that I hope you went out afterwards and really practiced good self-care and rewarded yourself with. Get yourself a nice big dinner at your favorite restaurant. That's what I do anytime I get an A. They say history, the history, so meta-history? Yes, basically. I think it's applicable. So, as you will see, as I was blithering on about grading and, like, course requirements and essays, we have actually reached Hollow Bastion, the narrative crux of the game, and kind of where we're going to be reaching our, our climax, as it were. There is one more world after this, but it principally exists as kind of a denouement. And now you can sit back and relax and enjoy one of the best tracks in the entire series when it comes to Miss Shimomura Yoko's beautiful composition. Oh, I love this place. And it is totally original for Kingdom Hearts, by the way. It's not drawn from any particular Disney work. You can tell that as far as visual and aesthetic design, this is just where Nomura and his team went hog wild. This game came out not much later after Final Fantasy X, which director Nomura also worked on quite extensively. And you can tell that he utilized a lot of the same motifs and styles for this place. Kind of got that gnarled Magitech aesthetic that he was so fond of when it came to environment design. And something, if you're new to this series, if this is the first stream or video of mine that you've happened to drop in on or watch, something that you can probably pick up on when you see like the Heartless, or you see unique bosses that were designed specifically for Kingdom Hearts, is that Tetsuya Nomura, what he is best at, I feel, is monster design. For instance, the best things he's designed for this series, far and away, are the Heartless and their analogs, kind of the new threats introduced for Kingdom Hearts 2 that I can't wait to show you guys on a later stream. Their design is incredible. It's varied, it's cartoonish, it's kind of goofy and full of personality, each and every one of them. I adore their aesthetics. So you'll see here a couple things I need to touch on really quickly. Hollow Bastion, more than almost any other world in Kingdom Hearts 1, really urges the player to explore, seeing as how it's a very large world, and it's also chock-a-block with these little treasure chests, these magic bubbles that we can make contact with that'll spirit us away, either beneath the waves or to alternative locations that we can then explore for a bit of additional kit, like so. Most of these will just be gummy pieces that, for my purposes, are pretty underwhelming. But a few of these treasures, like the Dalmatians I rescued a bit earlier, are actually pretty important, as we can then turn them in elsewhere, in the case of the Dalmatians for Traverse Town, at Traverse Town, rather, for some pretty useful materials that we can use toward the end of the game.
No vessel, no help from the Heartless.
And here we have
So tell me,
our bonus party member for this world, and the best party member in the entire game.
Believed. Nothing more to it. When our world fell into darkness, Belle was taken from me. I vowed I would find her again, no matter what the cost. I believed I would find her. So here I am. She must be here. I will have her back!
take her if you can.
We don't get to hear much of him, but Beast's voice actor is incredible. Also, I would just like to take time to say how much I love Riku's weapon.
So, you finally made it.
It's one of the only times we'll see it in the entire series, this particular weapon. And it is called, like, sort of to contrast Sora's silly, Disney-inspired weapons, the Soul Eater.
Riku.
But it all ends here. There can't be two Keyblade Masters.
What are you talking about?
And it's basically a petite Soul Edge
True Master.
from, well, Soul Calibur. Right down to the eye on the hilt.
Maleficent was right. You don't have what it takes to save Kairi. It's up to me. Only the Keyblade Master can open the secret door and change the world.
Love that synchronization of, like, the mouth animation. That's brilliant.
I'm the one who fought my way here with the Keyblade.
You were just the delivery boy. Sorry, your part's over.
So
now.
we see here something that will be expounded upon in later
What great
installments.
hero is this?
Riku is actually the Keyblade's chosen one, not Sora. This is kind of, embodied in-game by Riku being better in every single way.
Oh, well, I know the king told us to follow the key and all, but...
See, I've mentioned this in my earlier streams, but here's how I like to think about Kingdom Hearts' principal cast. Sora and Riku are equal protagonists in this grand narrative. But they're protagonists who kind of approach the central problems, conflicts of this narrative in totally disparate ways as informed by kind of their inspiration. And I'm sorry I'm talking over this cutscene, but not much more of note happens here. Other than we gain the Beast, we lose the Keyblade, and we then have to rely on our partner to do most of the fighting for us for the next roughly 5 to 10 minutes of gameplay. See, Sora is the protagonist of this series if they were written by and for Walt Disney Studios. He's bright, he's cheery, he's somewhat childish and optimistic, and he himself does not grow or change by, I would say, by kind throughout the entire series. He intensifies, he becomes happier, more powerful, kind of more optimistic and cheerful, but he doesn't undergo a significant character development because, kind of in the traditional Disney narrative, the heroes sometimes don't really have to. They act as an agent in their world, and they're perfectly sufficient for narrative purposes without having to change substantially. Now, contrast that with Riku, who I feel is this series' protagonist if they were written by Square Enix, right? He is by and large a darker, slightly more mature character who has to deal with problems within himself. In this installment, he is able to be quite easily swayed by Maleficent and the Heartless with promises of power, grandeur, agency, and he then kind of has to in later installments, deal with the consequences of falling not just to the darkness, but of being weak, giving into temptation, and he then has to decide how he wants to utilize his agency in this world. Does he want to take the easy way and kind of work with the darkness, work with malefic forces in order to get what he wants, or does he want to use his determination, kind of take inspiration from Sora and become a better person, take the hard path, as it were, and do whatever is necessary, make whatever sacrifices necessary to defend those he loves, at a significant personal cost. Riku has to change. He has to learn from himself, he has to learn from his friends and others in the world around him, and most importantly, the world, right? The world he's in does not yield to his will in quite the same way it does Sora's, which is okay, because this kind of internal conflict, this kind of angst, really, as it was, this useful angst, kind of typifies Square Enix's protagonists of this era, like the late 90s and early 2000s, and so in that way, he is, quite simply, the deeper protagonist, the more mature protagonist, the Square Enix protagonist in this series. And for people who got quite tired of Square Enix's type of protagonist, I think Sora's a really, really nice change of pace. And the series is better for having both Sora and Riku present in its narrative, in almost equal shares, especially in later installments. But that's just me actually trying to live up to my handle for once. We've got new enemies here. These are the Dark Balls. They are pure-blood Heartless, meaning they were not manufactured by our antagonists artificially. They are basically like really aggressive aerial nuisances. With a Keyblade, they would be no problem at all, but without one, we have to rely on Beast to do most of the heavy lifting, meaning our job principally is to either avoid them or use our magic, which thankfully we've retained, to whittle them down. Thankfully, the Beast is more than sufficiently empowered to dispatch Dark Balls and most other basic Heartless. Now, you see here, we've kind of got a problem. We're able to use that magic bubble outside to float into this waterway, but we're kind of trapped here. Unless, of course, well, if this were the Keyblade, we might be able to break through a fortified concrete wall, but without it, we will have to, as always, rely on the Beast to do what he does best. Gaming Spanner says that's some pretty good writing. Didn't expect it from a Disney History Tour, from Disney History Tour the game. Well, see, here's the thing. I'm not entirely sure if that's intentional or not on the writer's part, but that's certainly what I get from the narrative. So we're actually coming down this way because the gates of Hollow Bastion, the central gates to the Bailey, are actually locked, and for some reason the gatehouse is down here. And now it's time for one of those switch puzzles that, again, Square Enix loved so much. And, of course, treasure. Another G, and as you see, now that we are unable to use our Trinities, those are those special environmental commands that we can use with Donald and Goofy near us, they are teasing us with really fundamental Trinities. The blue Trinity marks, the green Trinity marks that we saw all throughout the game. Some kind of platform here that we'll need to raise later on, or lower later on. Guys, I'm probably going to call it a day for the stream after I unlock the Hollow Bastion gates and double back to a save point. But really quickly, I do just want to once again thank everybody who stopped by in the stream chat, or those of you, especially those of you who are taking the time to watch this later on VOD on my YouTube channel once I finally get all of these uploaded. Or those of you who have, you know, gotten hooked by later streams, and decided to come back and see, like, kind of where we started with this venture. I know these are really rough, so I do appreciate you taking the time to kind of see where we began. Gaming Spanner says, wait, the Keyblade shows a hero. Is it Disney Master Sword or Disney Excalibur? Honestly, it's Disney Excalibur. The Keyblade chooses its owner based on, like... Oh, okay, this is kind of complex, but the Keyblade, believe it or not, is kind of a hereditary power that its chosen wielder may pass on to, like, a successor at any time. However, the Keyblade can also detect those hearts or those souls with an immense amount of light present in them, and, like exercise a token measure of agency to, like, determine its wielder then accordingly. Okay, and we've unlocked the gates with something. I'm not entirely sure how this device is supposed to work, since I don't see any, like, real gears or cogs or anything like that, but yeah, whatever. Disney magic. And the Keyblade, this Keyblade, is also not the only Keyblade. You find out in later installments, there's thousands of the friggin' things. And for some reason, this is just an inordinately powerful one that is kind of the will of the, like, kind of the worlds of light made manifest. See, anytime you hear Heart in Kingdom Hearts, do this for me, guys. I want you to think soul. The narrative makes so much more sense if you take heart to mean what we would understand to be the soul. It's gonna save you so much headache later on. Once, like, every third word in, like, the script is heart, heart, darkness, dark, heart, light, dark. Gaming Spanner says, yes, the patented Disney magic. Yeah, trust me, it's potent and lucrative. You know, I've actually been to Disney World, Walt Disney World down in Orlando, Florida once, and I'm not, like, much of a theme park guy, but it was incredible. It was the most spectacular environment I've been in my life. And let me tell you, this kind of gives you an idea of my priorities. The rides were nice, especially seeing, like, all the new Star Wars themed, like, rides they had, but good night, the food. The food was something else. Gaming Spanner says, or every time you hear a heart, take a shot. No, guys, don't do this. You will die. You will die of alcohol poisoning about 30 minutes into your first Kingdom Hearts title, and I don't want that for you. It's awful. The series has a rather, shall we say, truncated lexicon, and it will return to that lexicon over and over and over and over again. Kingdom Hearts 1, it's not too bad, actually. Most of the series milieu had yet to really be established, and I think I'm using that right. Milieu? I think so. And as a result, you get, like, a pretty basic story that would be the natural result of Square Enix collaborating with Disney in their heyday. Gaming Spanner says, I'd love to go to Disney World or Land or something, but I ain't got cash to splash. I understand, man. I live in, like, Middle Tennessee, so it's, like, kind of a lengthy car ride away, so you need more time than money, really, to go to Disney World. I've only been once, but it really was pretty fantastic. My favorite part, was Epcot, which is kind of the sci-fi themed park, as it were, and their World Showcase, which is home to, like, close to a dozen different pavilions, operated by different organizations from around the world who wish to represent their country. So, for instance, my favorite was the Moroccan Pavilion, sponsored, funded, and I want to say staffed by the Moroccan government. Their Restaurant Marrakech, is incredible. It was the best lamb I've had in my entire life, and, oh, all the meat, so much meat. I got, like, so many Moroccan meat dishes you wouldn't believe. And all of them were seasoned to perfection. Oh, God. If I could cook like that, I would actually splurge for the meats I love, like lamb, goat, all that, way more often. Gaming Spinner says, I'm rather far removed from any Disney park, so it would be a large contribution to both. Oh, I feel that. Wasn't there... And this would still be a good distance for you, I think. But wasn't there, like, a Disney park for some time in, like, France that was not all that well received? Like Euro Disneyland, wasn't it? I want to say that was in France. Or there is one in France, and Euro Disneyland was elsewhere. I'm not all that well-versed on my history of Disney parks. Okay, well, I've just been gathering up a lot of treasure, most of it, unfortunately, kind of bereft of utility for me at this moment, so I'm going to have to head on back up, and then, probably tag the save point to close us out for today. Yeah, Disneyland Paris, that's it. There was a Euro Disneyland too, but I'm fairly certain that closed, and I have no idea where it was. Yeah, no, Gaming Spanner says they're a ways off the tube. I know, it's quite a ways off there. I don't know my Disney parks history, nor do I know much in the way of European, like organizational or leisure history post, like, 1700. Alright. Ladies and gentlemen, that's actually going to close us out for today. Now that we have made quite a bit of progress, we have breached the exterior of Hollow Bastion just a little bit. We cleared a new Coliseum tournament, earning us not one but 2 new Keyblades, and in addition we were able to complete Neverland and square off with 2 of my favorite bosses in the Kingdom Hearts series there, Shadow Sora and Captain Hook. I want to thank all of you once more for dropping by today or watching us video on demand on YouTube. I really appreciate these streams, guys, because they give me an opportunity to interact with those of you who want to drop by and just chat with me for a bit. I know this is not my best game, nor was I in prime form today, so I'm really appreciative to all of you for, like, toughing it out with me. You guys are amazing, and I love being able to do this for and with all of you. This was a pretty good first day back, and stay tuned to my Twitter, which is a thing I do now, as much as I'm not a huge social media person, but I do have a Twitter that will let you know, it should send out automated notifications every time I stream, but if it doesn't, I will be sure to post there in advance of and as soon as the stream goes live, every single occasion that we do. Expect another stream for me later this week. I'm not entirely sure when, maybe 2-3 days, something like that. But until then, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all one last time so much. I am so grateful to have all of you in my life and here present on the streams or on the channel or something like that. Thank you for sticking with me through a pretty tumultuous little period of transition now as we attempt to move not just back towards constant content production, but also away from the channel's old focus and to this type of more laid-back streaming format. I thank you all so much, and you're the lifeblood of this channel, and I hope that you'll keep flowing with us in the future. Until next time, this is Brady the Overanalyst, saying, in the old soul tradition, or no, sorry, I'm actually going to use my old sign-off from radio. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, this is Brady the Overanalyst wishing you, in the old broadcast tradition, love, peace, and soul. Take care of yourselves.